Like many illegal substances, heroin was once an over-the-counter medicine specifically used as a cough suppressant. More scientifically, the substance is known as morphine diacetate. But as the substance widely became abused in America, and backstreet opium dens became a grim stain on cities like London, it became an illegal substance in the 1920s. However, in the 70s, the substance that had already become a rebranded household name came back with a horrifying vengeance. Suddenly, little packets of H were being found all over New York, branded with the name Blue Magic. This Blue Magic brand separated this product from the rest as the cleanest, strongest and purest product on the market. As shown in the film American Gangster, Frank Lucas was the man responsible for supplying and branding this product, ultimately turning hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers into mindless substance zombies. Frank Lucas was born into poverty and violence in LaGrange, North Carolina. He claimed as a child he saw his cousin murdered by the Ku Klux Klan for staring at a white woman. This is what he claims inspired him to become a violent criminal. Understandably, this ruined his ability to feel empathy. Lucas moved from North Carolina to New York to start his career in the illegal substance trade. Other sources claim he fled after having an affair with an employer's daughter. Apparently, when the employer found out, he tried to fight him, but was knocked out with a pipe. Then, Frank stole $400 from his employer's safe, set the business on fire and fled. However, in his own words, it was merely a business decision. Allegedly, when he arrived in New York as a 14-year-old, he asked people where the black people live, and he was directed to Harlem. So, he moved to the overcrowded, addict-dense, crime-laden district of Harlem. Initially, he was homeless and he started off by robbing people. Then, he evolved into a small-time seller. He could only get his product from the mafia, who at that time controlled the trade. This product would be shipped to the US after being produced in Turkey and smuggled from France. He began to earn a reputation as a hardened and vicious gangster when he executed one of his sellers in the middle of the street. Frank had given this man named Tango 1 kilo to sell, but Tango refused to pay him the money he earned from selling it. So, in order to restore and build on his reputation, Lucas took him out in broad daylight in the middle of New York. He met the godfather of Harlem, Bumpy Johnson, who worked with the Genovese crime family in New York whilst playing pool. Bumpy Johnson was a respected crime figure in New York and perhaps was the first serious leader of organised crime in New York's black community. Also, unlike today's selfish criminal element, he used some of his earnings to give back to the community. Bumpy Johnson's life is also portrayed in its own highly rated TV series, The Godfather of Harlem. Lucas began working for Johnson in the late 1960s as a driver. He claimed he became his right-hand man, even living in his house for a 2-year period. When Johnson died at the age of 62 in the 70s, Frank Lucas bullied his way into inheriting the substance supply empire from him. He then, working under the mafia, controlled much of the H supply in Harlem. However, the partnership soon began to fizzle out thanks to the DEA. The DEA and the Turkish government, at the behest of President Nixon, had shut down Turkey's legal production of the substance, meaning there was no product to export and sell in the US. This also meant Lucas was in debt to the mafia, as they still expected their money, even though there was no trade. So much so that wiretaps recorded mafia members discussing assassinating Lucas. However, he soon found a new supply chain that would cut the mafia out entirely. He could easily pay off the debt he owed and start earning money out with the control of the mob. He was able to source a much purer product, and like a modern day marketer, he began to brand it. Much like Walter White in Breaking Bad, his product was easily recognisable for its strength and quality, and it was in high demand from addicts. Blue Magic was so much stronger than previous products that addicts even began to overdose on it. For Lucas to stay in control of the trade and to keep the reputation of his brand strong, he fiercely guarded it with violence. He moved his family members from the south to work for him, as he believed blood is thicker than water, and he could trust family more than mere business associates. These family members were a crew known as the Country Boys. In particular, his brother Shorty Lucas would become a feared enforcer. Anyone trying to muscle in on their turf, stealing from them, or diluting the product for their own profit would be taken out, as would many of the rival dealers in the area. The competition was being eliminated. One rival that stood strong was Nicky Barnes, who Lucas actually put out a contract on. He was able to survive any attempts on his life, but not prison. In 1978, Barnes was sentenced to life in prison before negotiating for a lighter sentence. Lucas soon became a millionaire, and he stashed his money in the Cayman Islands. Unlike in the film where he tries to stay low-key, in real life he was a show-off. He could not help flaunting his money, which put a bullseye on his back for law enforcement. DEA officer Richie Roberts, whose character was portrayed in American Gangster, even went to dinner in a fancy restaurant in New York to witness his ludicrous displays of wealth from his dirty money. Lucas liked to frequent Small's Paradise, where he, his friends and his paid-for women would splash champagne and eat the finest foods. Richie Roberts headed a new special task unit named the Z Team to take him down. Firstly, they lab analysed Blue Magic, which unsurprisingly showed it was much stronger than its competition. What did surprise them is that they discovered that it was coming from Asia and not Turkey. In 1975, Frank Lucas was caught when his home was raided. Around $580,000 of undocumented cash was found in his house. He was charged with conspiracy to distribute, and he was given 40 years behind bars. However, even after he was imprisoned, the product was still moving through the streets. The full operation was uncovered when the Z Team received a tip-off about a large shipment coming from North Carolina into the Newark projects. They tracked the parcel and raided the building when it arrived at its final destination. The distribution was continuing under the control of the Country Boys and other associates. Product with a street value of around $10 million was uncovered in the raid. The key to unlocking the secrets of their smuggling operation was Frank's 17-year-old nephew. Facing life in prison, he began to cooperate with the DEA for a lighter sentence. This evidence also meant Frank Lucas was given an additional 30 years behind bars, which meant he would likely die in prison. Like a house of cards, Frank Lucas himself began to crumble, and he was next to negotiate with the DEA. His cooperation led to more than 100 convictions. Frank told them he got the product from Bangkok in Thailand. This meant his operation could get the product directly instead of using the mafia as a middleman. It was in 1972, whilst in debt to the mafia, that an incredible opportunity fell into his lap. A mysterious man claiming to be a large-scale professional importer offered Lucas a deal that he quickly accepted. The man claimed his operation made around $50 million a year. The man even loaned him 25 grand so he could keep the mafia at bay. However, although he shook off his mafia shackles, he would still be working under this new supplier. Frank would reveal that this man was named Leslie Ike Atkinson, who was already behind bars at the time. Atkinson was the real brains behind the operation, and he put it together with military precision. He was an ex-master sergeant in the US Army. Atkinson used his military contacts, such as former colleague Herman Jackson, to import H from Asia. This was during the Vietnam War, so planes were travelling back and forth between Asia and the US with military cargo aboard. Of course, no one would suspect any illegal substances to be smuggled onto military aircraft, so any product would be unlikely to be discovered. So, taking advantage of this gap in security and proximity to high-grade product, Atkinson began smuggling it on military aircraft into North Carolina military bases. The US military essentially became smugglers, and the product was unknowingly being protected by the world's most powerful armed forces. He had a network of soldiers on his payroll that would help him in the importation. Customs began to suspect the stuff was coming in somehow from the military, and they began to search planes and soldiers. At first, soldiers smuggled the stuff in using their military bags. To hide it, they sewed a false bottom to their packs which could hold around 700 grams of pure H. He even told soldiers to stash it in film canisters and inside injured soldiers' casts. However, he had to rely on a network of soldiers smuggling small amounts at a time. This meant the operation was unstable and liable to be discovered at any moment. The more people you add to any operation, the more complex it becomes, and one broken link could take down the entire chain of command. So, instead, he began shipping it in large quantities in hollowed out furniture bound for America. It has also been claimed, but not proven, that the stuff would be smuggled back in the coffins of dead soldiers killed in Vietnam. They could smuggle as much as 100 kilos at a time. They would buy a pure kilo at $4,000, cut it up into 4 separate kilos and sell it for $100,000, which is an incredible markup percentage. Even at 25%, this product was the strongest stuff available, and addicts actively sought it out. The distribution was not limited to New York, and it made its way to dealers along the East Coast and even the West Coast. It is estimated that he made $400 million between 1968 and 1975. But when Frank cooperated, he brought the entire empire down, leading to more than 100 convictions. Atkinson was also given a further 19 years. Later, he would get another 13 years for continuing to run the operation from prison. Frank Lucas, in return, had his sentence reduced to only 6 years, and he became a free man in 1981. It seems like the film American Gangster was quite favourable in portraying Frank Lucas as the genius behind the operation. In reality, the film should have been about Leslie Ike Atkinson. However, it would be quite difficult to make a film about a man that kept to the shadows, operating out of secrecy. Instead, they inflated the story of Frank Lucas as there was more action to draw from. The truth was that Lucas was given the lucrative deal of a lifetime, got caught relatively quickly, and then snitched on everyone to save himself. 3 years after he was released, he even got caught again for selling product and was given 7 more years before being released again in 1991. Frank Lucas was not a criminal mastermind. Instead, he was a ruthless street dealer and a snitch who was given a tremendous opportunity that he squandered. Upon the release of American Gangster, Atkinson would even phone Richie Roberts to complain about Frank Lucas's portrayal. He saw it as Frank was getting all the credit for his ingenuity. It has also been argued that Frank Matthews, who had a Venezuelan connection, and Nicky Barnes had a bigger operation than him. Incredibly, Lucas, Atkinson and Matthews all came from North Carolina. And although these men are often portrayed as rags to riches, flashy gangsters to be looked up to, in reality, nothing has done more to destroy the black community than people like these.